Hey, this is Martin Schneider, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Constellation, covering growth technologies and all kinds of cool application stuff.
And I'm Larry Dignan, Editor-Chief of Constellation Insights, and we're your co-hosts for episode 104. We're here to talk about the latest news, insights, all that good stuff. We're going to kick off with an overview of ServiceNow Knowledge 25. Whole big can of whoop ass there that's interesting to talk about. We're going to talk about what we learned from earnings season so far, and then I'll go through some key projects to watch, and then we're going to talk to Esteban Kolsky about resilience and economy, and judging from the way we've been going back and forth with me and him, we'll probably argue or something like that. So. But first, let's get to the news. Martin, it's all about ServiceNow.
It's all about ServiceNow, and for ServiceNow, it's kind of all about CRM right now. It's it's kind of the stake in the ground moment. They've been leading up to it. The most telegraphed pass by a quarterback in history, right? But I think it's the real deal now, and they are all about the CRM. A couple between some calls and knowledge, a couple digs around. This isn't about them going after Salesforce. It's about their customers asking them to do it, right?
It's sort of this passive aggressive knife in the side kind of game. It's kind of interesting. They're like, well, we think everybody can be winners, but our customers are asking for someone to be the loser.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, that was kind of, it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, but I mean, look, like ServiceNow's been building the building blocks or the foundational elements of having a CRM for years now. And what's interesting is they're doing a lot of that not by acquisition, right? And really kind of building into their platform. A lot of their AI and a lot of other things have been coming in by acquisition. Some of their, the recent CPQ and other things around that. But when you look at, what they're doing with the CRM, it really is trying to become part of the fabric of what they do. And I know they've got another term, fabric is around some of their agentic AI. So I don't want to mince terms here, but, it is really interesting to see how those, the workflows, not just the agentic workflows and the core data foundation are supporting a CRM move so that, the data model is kind of more centralized by design. That customer history and 360s and all those things you want to need, you're going to need to be successful are there kind of out of the box for ServiceNow CRM customers moving forward. It's going to be interesting, how they how they fare, because it's, I think a lot of people are using them for what you could call CRM already, but now kind of labeling it and how they show the growth there will be interesting.
Yeah, and it's also part of CRM is just one part of the mix here.
Yep.
They talked about, their AI control tower, all these agentic workflows, AI agents. They're basically taking this horizontal approach that they've already done.
Yep.
And leveraging that to a bunch of new markets. And what's interesting here is now with AI, it's actually more feasible to sort of be that overlay for all these legacy systems.
Yep.
And it's just fascinating to watch. But, it does dawn on me, like listening to ServiceNow and, the keynotes and McDermott riff and all that. You're almost like, well, wow, like Salesforce marketed Agentforce. And then what if Salesforce winds up doing Agentforce? Or what if ServiceNow winds up doing Agentforce better than Salesforce can?
I mean, it could be. I mean, what I'm getting from when you look at Fabric and when you look at some of the control tower is the understanding of multi-agent, which I think Salesforce gets too. But the idea that, taking it as agentic AI is kind of like APIs on steroids, apps on steroids, and understanding that interoperability is key. Because when you look at both ServiceNow and Salesforce, neither of them have an ERP offering, for example, right? No. So you need to, by default, be understanding, talking to, and pulling data from them, because that's better data, right? And it's more reliable and all those types of things. But, that understanding and that story of telling an already multi-agent and meaning multi-platforms being the agents. Because if you look at like an out-of-the-box Salesforce agent, their BDR agent, their sales coach, whatever it is, that's multi-agent by design because it's multiple agentic flows that come together in a packaged agent, right? So everything is like agentic AI is kind of multi-agent by default if you're doing anything with anything, any kind of sophistication, right? But thinking about multi-agent when it means talking to agents from other platforms, maybe even custom-built agents that that larger enterprises are going to build on their own. That's where I think ServiceNow has a really interesting ability to take an interesting leadership position. I think Microsoft's thinking about that as well, but I think it's interesting where they play versus where Salesforce plays, versus and even where Oracle's got a lot of multi-agent stuff. So it's going to be interesting, where like how does SAP continue to stay relevant? They're trying to talk about agents and trying to do all this stuff. It's like, does ServiceNow say, oh, well, let our agents pull into SAP, and then we kind of you don't have to worry about SAP right now, right? Kind of leave SAP where it is.
I think what's most interesting about AI agents right now is it's the horizontal plays, the Google Clouds, the AWS, the hyperscalers, and the integrators of all people are building the best AI.
Boomi is one of the most interesting, interesting AI companies right now that people aren't thinking about as having a really interesting play for agentic AI.
And I think it's going to be really hard for those companies that are known for their SaaS platforms and SaaS applications to basically get in on that because customers just aren't going to believe them.
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure. Because you look at the history of these companies Salesforce coming from an application side that also had some workflow and then had to build more and more workflow and then had to acquire MuleSoft to do even better workflows and integration and all those types of things. Where ServiceNow kind of comes from workflow,
right?
And then puts the applications on top of it. And what we're learning with generative AI and other types of AI, it's like the application part is the easy part, right? And what that application experience is changing more and more and becoming less and less screen oriented, right? And becoming more and more fluid and headless and all these types of things where you have really strong workflow and the agentic flows mixing with that. That's where you've got potentially really great, I don't even want to call it secret sauce, but like killer sauce, right? And that's what's going to be interesting. So ServiceNow, amazing potential there.
And it's going to be interesting because, ServiceNow's conference is going to lead up to basically Salesforce earnings in a few weeks.
Yeah.
So then they'll have their word. Speaking of earnings, it's been a barrage of earnings the last few weeks. Perhaps the biggest takeaway was that the AI infrastructure boom seems to be alive and well. Companies are still spending. Microsoft, Google, AWS, they all said there's some capacity constraints. So all that talk about them not spending on data centers or pulling back, it's all just BS. They're still dropping the CapEx. What's unclear though is whether they're dropping that CapEx on NVIDIA GPUs or not, right? Because I kind of went down, looked at all the comments from everybody in the food chain, and power is the biggest, that's the biggest barrier to this AI build out, right? So companies are procuring megawatts, they're procuring sites. And when you think about it, those GPUs are probably the last thing you buy.
Yeah.
When you're doing all this stuff.
So we're in it. It's AI is an energy crisis, not it's about.
It is.
It's not about the technology. It's not about the capability. It's about powering all this. And and part of powering is like the cost of powering, right? And the capacity and the availability and making that available. And do I do it? Where's the utility going to come from? And that isn't clear right now, right? So it's an interesting time.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I'll be interested to see how it plays out for NVIDIA, because I'm not convinced. 2 quarters ago, it was clear all your money was going to NVIDIA.
Yeah.
Now with Google's new TPUs, and you got AWS with Trainium, they're ramping that up. Microsoft has its own silicon, they're optimizing.
Right.
As this stuff gets optimized, it's going to be less and less clear whether that all goes to one player or not. And it's just going to be fascinating to watch. So, that's it we'll have for the news right now. But stay tuned. I'm going to give my take on the projects to watch. And then we'll catch up with Esteban and talk a little economy. Hi, I'm Larry Dignan with Constellation Insights, and we're here with Constellation Research's latest analyst, Esteban Kolsky. For a backdrop. That's you.
Oh, God.
as a backdrop, me and Esteban argue about the economy and planning. Basically, I don't know, was it daily? It's pretty much daily at this point. Um, so let's just kick off, Esteban, with I think in terms of quarters, you think in terms of years. What are CXOs supposed to be thinking right now when it comes to, all the volatility in the economy and basically how to plan for this stuff?
So I would say there's three things. Okay. Number one, whatever you're thinking that you're going to do now to make an impact, stop. It's not going to make an impact until next year. If you look at where all the CXOs are right now, for the most part, pretty much everybody is already focused on Q4, if not into 2026 already. Whatever you do will not have an immediate impact, the way that you think it is. So stop thinking that you're going to fix it or do something now that it's going to make a difference or whatever. Start planning longer term. I look at 3 horizons. I look at a 9 to 12 month horizon as the near horizon. I look at a 12 to 18 as the short term, and I look at 18 to 36 as a midterm horizon. Those 3 horizons is how I plan everything that I do, because honestly, that's the only way that you can go about it. I mean, you can't impact anything right now. If you were to make a decision to embrace bigger technology, let's do quantum AI, anything that is reverberating out there right now, do you really think that whatever you do right now is going to have an impact in the next 2 or 3 months, right? So the first part is stop thinking that you're going to do something that is going to impact the company right now. Start thinking that whatever you do is going to impact the company over a much longer run. Right, that's number one.
So what if you have to optimize a supply chain, and because I'm talking to the, I'm looking at the earnings calls from the the services companies, and it's all about cost optimization because they don't know how these tariffs are going to land. Does that set you up for that longer term time frame, or is it a matter of just putting out fires and then worry about the rest later?
So let's take an example. I mean, the tariffs is a great way to see why whatever you do now is not going to make a difference, right? If you were not planning about this last year, when we were going through prior to the election, when the promises were made that it's going to be tariffs and everything, if you did not take that seriously, if you did not make some plans for the near, short, and midterm at that moment, not much you could do at this point. When people say, "Oh, look at Apple, how smart they diverted 600 million iPhones from China to India to finish setting up and sending to over the tariff," do you think that happened in a week? I mean, there's absolutely no way that this happens in a week, or even a month, or even 2 months. By the time that the tariffs were announced, they already had all this stuff in place, and they already monitored, did they make the right decisions? 9 months ago, a year ago, when we make these decisions. So yeah, you can optimize, you can do small things, but the big, we are in a recession, no matter how you look at it. I mean, it was just announced yesterday, I think, or the day before, that we had a negative growth quarter for Q1. Everybody I know has been planning to be in a recession for the majority of this year for about a year already. So if you're really going to react now to the things that are happening, I don't think you're taking it seriously enough, how long it takes to make these things work. Small projects, optimization, sure. Do you want to launch AI to create some differentiation in the market? Potentially, not a bad idea, potentially. But the truth of the matter is, whatever you do is going to have a long-term impact, especially at a C-level. It's going to have a long-term impact, much more than a today impact. So you have your staff working on the today stuff, so you can focus on the long-term stuff. I don't know any board that says, "Hey, this happened this week, let's react right now," unless it's a crisis, right? If it's a crisis, sure, but otherwise, there's just all long-term planning. Quarter to quarter, it's good for the CFO. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so it's sort of. I mean, I guess thing I wonder about with Apple, is was that spurred by basically other crises, like whether it was COVID? Yeah, I mean, they knew they had to diversify from China, right? They were way too weighted towards that in the supply chain.
Right.
So they did make those moves earlier, but now it looks like, man, you're just sort of right place, right time. Like, it all looks a lot faster. Plus, they also have scale and a ton of cash too.
You bring an excellent point when you say COVID, because I mean the pandemic. Let's call it. Let's divert it divest it from the virus, right? But the pandemic itself, the event of the pandemic, which was once every 100 years in generation or whatever. The thing is like nobody was prepared for that at the level that they needed to be prepared. And what it actually did bring in is the concept of resiliency. The key word for this year with everybody that I know has been resiliency. So people have been building resiliency over the last couple of years. We never moved from pre-pandemic normal to pandemic disaster crisis to post-pandemic normal. So resiliency was the name of the game. So I think that Apple, with what they did, is because they actually built resiliency into the networks and into their processes. I think that what we're witnessing is essentially that the fact that the resiliency was built into everything. So I think that is fantastic how resiliency gives us the ability to react faster than before with a much more dynamic model and a better way to do things that we did before. If you were to ask me right now what I recommend my C-level and board member people that I talk to, I tell them that before 2025 started, before the trials became real, the three words that ruled basically every conversation were resiliency, growth, and sustainability. And sustainability kind of went down for many different reasons, but resiliency and growth remain, and from those, resiliency is the number one. So I'm seeing everybody midterm, long-term planning for resiliency.
What do you think that means for smaller companies? I mean, I listened to the Amazon call. Yeah, I've listened to all these large companies, the Exxons. You go down the list. Like even UPS, they're a little flat-footed, but they'll figure it out. But they also have gobs of cash. They have scale. They have heft.
Yeah.
What about that mid-market company? I know of a few small businesses that went under from the last tariff thing back in the first Trump administration.
Right.
Because they don't have the capital or the systems or it's just a different ballgame for them. What's it look like for them?
So that's an excellent question, right? And I think I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago about this, a board member. We were discussing that. I think it was a couple of days ago. Some I can't remember exactly when. So I'm gonna claim ignorance on the day. But I read in the last few days that 60% of the growth in Q1 came from basically what they call the gig economy, consultants, fractionals, advisors, coaches, people that are not full-time doing what they're doing, and they are doing a gig economy. I mean, working little by little. This is becoming a very interesting concept because there's no smaller business or mid business than an agency or a consultancy or something like that. So you're seeing a lot of value being produced by smaller companies that are actually leveraging the concept that you can produce something, you can create something, you can put something out there that would allow you to make money without being a big company. Technology is the ultimate democratizer for small organizations, and the huge move forwards that we made in the last 20 years in technology made small companies much more resilient and much more competitive and much more dynamic. And I think that's what we're seeing more than anything.
All right. Well, I'll leave it on that. Thanks for joining us. And
my pleasure.
I'm sure we'll pick up this debate in, a few minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. This thing out. Hi, I'm Larry Dignan from Constellation Insights, and we're going to give you a handful of projects to watch. This is going to be an ongoing series because I see a lot of these IT transformation projects going on in the background. And, these things sort of happen in installments. And then, after a year or two, you sort of get the big bang case study. But in the meantime, these are just fun things to watch and track over time. First one is PayPal. PayPal has this great big vision for being an agentic commerce platform. What's that mean exactly, aside from the agentic buzzword? It basically means that they can connect the merchant, the consumer, and all the stuff that happens in between. And then they plan on layering on all the decision support, the content, that kind of stuff. The catch here is before they do any of this, there is a huge transformation to happen. as you may or may not know, PayPal's been built by acquisition in a lot of ways. Braintree, Venmo's the probably best known sub brand. All these things operate in different silos, data silos. So what they're doing, they're basically combining into one consumer platform, and they're basically combining cloud native applications. But the trick here is they have to all get all these applications, all these businesses on one platform, in a cloud native way, so they can leverage AI. So here's a look at the timeline. If you look at this extends into next year, and then they'll leverage AI completely. So it's kind of a common theme we see out there, but PayPal is definitely a high-profile one to watch. The other one is Bank of America. If you recall, if you're a Bank of America customer, you know this thing called Erica. It's basically it's basically a customer support tool that was built on RPA, a few other technologies. This is pre-generative AI. So what they're doing now is they're basically turbocharging Erica, and they're using it internally too. So the customer support people have it now. So they're basically taking what was a customer support tool and customer experience tool and leveraging internally too. So on the recent earnings, they talked about Erica, they talked about digital use cases, and they're basically leveraging AI to basically boost margins and all that stuff. As far as what happens to Erica in the future, it's going to be interesting to watch. I think it's going to be a little bit like Alexa Plus. Alexa was kind of cool there for a while, and now Alexa's getting a brain transplant, and with LLMs is supposed to be much better. I expect Erica to be a similar thing, whether it's internally, externally, etc. So that's another interesting project to watch. The other project to watch is Citigroup. So if you've been following the Citigroup story at all, it's a game of transformations. This company's been transforming for years. That's because they've had a gazillion systems. They're trying to get it down to one or two or three, at least a handful, and they're moving to a common platform. So then AI happens, and Citigroup sees a way to basically leverage everything out and have like a common chassis. And this is driving real returns now. They're definitely getting more efficient. It's a great timeline. They're using Google Cloud for a lot of their data and AI layer. But when you see this, it's a transformation that's taken over years and years. And the big lesson here is you have to do all that grunt work to even get to the point where you can use AI. But, if you look at what we'll post behind me, cities, it's embracing AI as a universal enabler. And first, they're going across the stack, across the all company for common functions. And now they're to the point where they're going to, do all these industry use cases, whether it's wealth management or whatever. But it's a project, it's a set of project in a longer timeline of transformation. Definitely worth watching over time. They pretty much update you every quarter. And they consolidate a bunch of systems, but it's an interesting mix of the new stuff and retiring tech debt on the back end. The other project worth watching over time is Walmart. They're doing a lot of AI for not only customer experience, but bridging their various sales channels and supply chain optimization. So there are Walmart distribution centers that are largely AI-driven, robotic. And they've launched a few interesting things that'll be interesting to see how they turn out. One's called Sparky. It's an AI shopping assistant. One is trend to product, where they can basically find the signals in the data, leverage trends, gear up inventory, and go with it. And this matters for fast fashion and those sort of things. There's the Just Go checkout, which is rolling out at Sam's Clubs. They're rolling that everywhere out. And then there's a thing called Wally, which is an AI assistant that for merchants to basically figure out when inventory needs to be updated. Ultimately, it's going to evolve into a AI inventory agent. And it's going to be fascinating to watch to see how that optimizes things. The other backstory with, Walmart's another one. It's a bunch of little projects and one big master plan. And when you look at how they're optimizing, you should check in with Walmart pretty much every quarter to see what they're doing. And the final one I'll throw out there is Bank of New York Mellon. So they kind of was news to me, but I checked out their earnings transcript and earnings report, and they talked about building out this platform called Eliza, and they're basically getting a lot of efficiencies out of it internally. They're skilling up a lot of their employees to use these assistants. But the thing that caught my eye with this project is it is basically built on OpenAI technology. So if you've been following OpenAI, you know, they get the attention for search and commerce and their models and all that kind of stuff. The reality is they do have some big enterprise deals where they're sort of tailoring their technology for industry use cases. And Bank of New York Mellon's one of those, you know, flagship customers. So that's a project worth watching just to see how the OpenAI turns out. Because the other, you know, you see a lot of these enterprise projects, they're betting on multiple models. It's pretty clear Bank of New York Mellon is, you know, they basically put most of their horses on with OpenAI. And that's a big bet worth watching just for future reference. And that's the handful of projects we're checking out now. Call that the May edition. We'll be back in a month with a few more. Thanks for watching.
All right. Well, that is a wrap on episode 104 of CRTV. Watch for our next episode in 2 weeks.
That's right. Co-host Holger Mueller and Liz Miller, also known as the Mueller Millers. They'll bring you episode 105 of CRTV. In the meantime, follow us on LinkedIn at Constellation R, and you can see us on LinkedIn and all those other usual places.
And don't forget to subscribe to Constellation Research TV on YouTube. Make sure that you are going to constellationr.com and checking out Larry's insights. You know, it's a constant flow of news analysis because we have a constant flow of news, not just during earnings season. So there's a lot going on, and Larry's on top of it all. So make sure, you know, you guys are on top of the website and subscribing to our newsletter.
All right. Have a great week.
All right. See you in 2 weeks, everyone.
All right, ServiceNow CRM, here we come. Salesforce, we're coming for you.
I think you should just open with that voice. It's really catchy.
Bill McDermott's running wild. Can you imagine? And Terrence is calling me. Why?
No, Larry, boundaries. Say, sorry, I'm in a meeting.
I know, I'm just trying to figure out how to do this on Signal.
You seem like you're in a good mood, Larry. More energy.
No, actually, you know what? You know what makes me really happy today? I woke up, my eye was twitching, I had a migraine, and I fended it off.
Okay. Mental fortitude. It really gets you.
It only took like 6 naproxen, but I think it worked. All right, where are we? I can't even see you, Martin. All right, here we go.
See me now?
I can. Just have to juggle these windows. So,
are you ready to go?
Scoot back so it's not all head.
Yeah, you were pretty far up there.
Yeah.
You let me
I
know
need more light, don't I?
Yeah, a little bit. You look a little whistleblower back then. All right, you ready to roll?
Yep, let's do it. You want to do the segment with Esteban then? So he doesn't have to sit through my riff?
He's like, no, he doesn't want to do that. He's like,
I don't know what segment you're talking about. I was told I had to be here, so I always do what Hannah says. It's a lot easier that way.
It is easier.
I only came here to make fun of Martin. I cannot go against Larry.
Yeah, you're gonna have to talk about real stuff with Larry because he reads.
I know. Well,
he's way smarter.
He's way smarter and more informed than I am. So I'm going like, what the fuck am I doing here now?
No.